My daughter's name is Lydia. When she was born and we got to see her for the first time, I was at an absolute loss of words to describe how beautiful I thought that she was. I'd never seen anything more beautiful in my entire life. I'd never experienced anything like that before, where I just could not comprehend how how beautiful that she was. So I remember she had curly hair, dark curly hair, which was a bit of a surprise that she had dark curly hair. We always thought that she would have blonde hair. I think my wife was hoping that she would have blonde hair like her and then kind of blue green eyes like me, but we never got to see her eye color. She had big feet, very similar. I think Danielle said that she thought that her feet were reminded her of my feet, and that was the thing that I just remember the most about her. Is I just could not comprehend how beautiful that she was. I mean, you see babies and people talk about babies all the time about how cute they are and all that, and I will be the first person to admit that, like, when my son was born, and there was a period of time where I was kind of like, he's a little bit, I don't know, he's a little bit scary looking. But when she was born, she was absolutely the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. So
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jonah.
yeah.
For this podcast, tell us a little bit about the time period leading up to the pregnancy of you and your wife, Danielle, and then where were you guys at? What were you guys doing? Was this a planned pregnancy, or was it a nice surprise? Or
So we had just moved to South Carolina in 2013. Excuse me. And it was actually in April when we found out. I think it was like April 15th. So tomorrow, I believe, would be like the anniversary, I guess, if you want to call it that, of when we found out that we were pregnant. We had been discussing. Definitely wanted to have children at the time. I kind of wanted to wait a little bit longer, just because, I mean, we had only been married maybe 2 years, and so, like, living together was all new and all that to me. And it's, you have a wife, and you're still trying to figure out how to live with one person, and then 9, 10 months later, you got another person coming in here, and it's difficult to all kind of figure that all out. But so we had been talking about getting pregnant, and then turns out that we were. So at the time, I was working in a hospital in cardiac rehabilitation.
Mm.
So, and then Danielle was working remotely. So she worked from home full time. She'd occasionally would have to travel for, various meetings and whatnot, or presentations. So back to Virginia or Maryland for various other places. So we were renting a home at the time. So it was in August of 2014 that we had purchased our first home together. And so it was just 2 months after that when we found out that Lydia was not going to make it, and she was stillborn. So that was very difficult, because, only being in our home 2 months, brand new home, and then, having to go through that experience, that was it's kind of like not starting off on the right foot, or so to speak, or whatnot. So we had some, I would say,
probably negative
memories
feelings.
or
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah. But figured that out. I remember details about the evening and very clearly. So, and I believe so at that time, obviously, this was well before COVID and all that craziness, but like I went to pretty much all of the doctor's appointments. And I remember very clearly my wife asking the doctor if she should be counting kicks, monitoring movement, the baby's movement patterns and whatnot. And he hesitated for a second and then said, "No, there's no need for you to do that." I can remember it very clearly, just like it happened yesterday, and that was 7+ years ago.
Yeah.
So one night we were watching TV, and it was actually we were watching The Walking Dead. It was on a Sunday night, so it was kind of later. It was like after 9, around 10 o'clock, something like that, and Danielle noticed that Lydia wasn't moving much, and I could see that she was getting pretty frustrated or pretty concerned. We were at 30 weeks at the time, so I think she had called into the doctor's office, and the doctor's office suggested that we go to the emergency department. So we went upstairs, started getting ready, and I remember praying about the situation and never having considered for a second that we would find out that our daughter was gone. It was quite the opposite. I remember when I was closing the door to go out of the garage to get in the car, I was thinking to myself, I was like, and I looked into our home, and I was like, when we come back from the hospital, we're going to be bringing a baby back home with us. And that was absolutely not the case. So we jumped in the car,
About what time was this? You were watching The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Called, got ready. Was this about midnight that you started to leave for the hospital?
It was a little before that. So it was before 11 o'clock when all this stuff started. So we got to the hospital late. Yeah. It was about a 45-minute drive, something like that, from where we lived at the time. Couldn't figure out what entrance to get into. We were on the wrong side of the hospital, had to go around to the other side. And then we got in there. They got us back into one of the rooms, and they started off doing a Doppler. And I can remember there were 2 or 3 nurses in the room, and they just kept trying just to do an audio capture of the heartbeat, and they couldn't find it. And then they got the doctor who was there that night, and he came in, ultrasound, and I can remember as clear as day seeing our daughter inside of my wife's belly and seeing her face. I can remember her face. She was laying on her right side, and you could see the outline of her rib cage. All of that I remember as clear as day, and you could just see her heart that wasn't beating. So that'll be something that sticks with me the rest of my life. And it was absolute shock, disbelief. The doctor, said, "I'm sorry, but your baby doesn't have a heartbeat." So, it's just the exact opposite of what literally I was thinking when we left. I was fully expecting that something would happen and we would deliver, even though it was at 30 weeks, I was still expecting somehow that we would deliver a baby that night, and a couple of days we'd come home and baby would be home and my wife would be fine and our baby would be fine. So it was definitely not the case, the exact opposite. So
yeah, no, it seems like it's a running thing with parents. It's always like you never expect that. You never expect to not come home with a child, Mm-hmm. And I remember, because we were sitting in church, and my wife's like, "Oh, I haven't felt him move in a while." And I was like, "No, he's just getting big. It's not. There's not a lot of room in you for a baby to So we went up to the hospital, and the whole way there, I was like, "Yeah, I'm glad we're going because it's going to put her at ease." And
Mhm.
I never expected, like what you said, I never expected to hear those words
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
your child's not alive.
Yeah.
So, about what time was this? Just to sort of set, you left about 11 o'clock. You got up to
Yeah.
45 minutes ish to get to
It
the hospital.
it was probably after 1 o'clock. When they actually did the ultrasound, and they determined that her heart wasn't beating.
Mm. And what are the next steps that after that? Did the medical staff give you like options? Like you guys, with us, they said, we could start the delivery process right now. We can hook you up to
Mhm.
Pitocin and get you guys going. You can go home. What were the
Yeah.
options and the steps that they told you?
Yeah. And, they did, I guess, give us the option. I do remember them saying something about, you guys could go home and come back for delivery, but you're going to have to deliver the baby. So we did not do that. We stayed there. So at the time we had a dog, so I think we had to call a neighbor or a friend to take the dog out, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So we stayed in the hospital though. They moved us to another room. The experience, and I guess this is kind of like a bittersweet thing to say. The experience that we had and the care that we received in the hospital was spectacular. The nurses were amazing, and it was, I would say, as bad of a situation as it could have been. It was great to have the care and the staff that were taking care of us. And still to this day, my wife is friends with a couple of the nurses who were there.
Mm.
And each year we try to go back on her birthday, October 13th. We try to go back and like take donuts over to the labor and delivery or something, treats or something like that. And we'll see like some of the nurses that had been there that night, and talk to them and whatnot. But anyways, we decided to stay there. They put us in another room that was kind of away from the rest of the other rooms that
Yeah.
had mothers and babies in them. Extremely difficult. Slept in the room, and Danielle probably didn't really sleep a whole lot. But and then it was late. I think they induced the next morning, and she was in labor for several hours, and then we delivered the next day, later in the day, early evening. And so that was on the 13th. We went in on the 12th. So on the 13th, we delivered in the evening. And then I think we stayed like a day after that.
So let's go back to the labor. Was it
Yeah.
an extremely hard labor for your wife, Danielle? Was it
Um,
like with our situation? Winter got an epidural so that she was like, we're already in a lot of pain mentally, and she was like, I don't really want to experience it physically. So we had an epidural. It was it was good for us to do that. But how was it for you guys? Was it a long
yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was. I mean, obviously the mental state of my wife at least was not good, understandably so.
Yeah.
I believe she tried to go without an epidural. It was either with Lydia or maybe one of our next children. But she did get an epidural, and so yeah. So I'm pretty sure they induced in the morning, and then it was 10-ish hours, maybe maybe around like 8 to 10 hours of labor.
Mm.
So
You mentioned that you guys had moved from a different part of the country to the Carolinas. Did you have family that had come in, or do you have family in the area, or
um,
friends that came in to support
yeah,
you,
yeah.
or did you guys want to
Just
be
at that
alone?
time, we had my mother-in-law and her husband were there as far as family goes, and then we had friends from our small group from church. People we're still in contact in contact or communication with, at least like via social media, like today. So we had, I had called people to let them know, and I called my family, called my wife's family, let them know, and her family was there pretty quickly. Like her dad flew down from Virginia, which was awesome. That he made sacrifices and did what he had to do to get there so quickly. And then my mother-in-law and her husband were there, not too long, and then our church group friends were there pretty quickly as well. And that made that had a significant impact. Just the negativity, the weight of the negativity that comes with the loss of a child. It's necessary to have friends that are supportive and want to help and want you to not hurt and to be in pain and all that. So it was great. The support that we had was awesome.
That's good. It's good to have support and people who love you around you. So
yeah, necessary.
And so you said that you were able to be with Lydia for about a day.
Yeah. Yep.
How was that stay in the hospital for that day?
So it was, obviously we had no expectations of, how it was going to go. I was battling internally about, what to do, how to handle the situation, as far as, I have my firstborn child here that I am never going to get to see again, in a matter of hours. And I kept, debating or battling within myself about, should I take pictures of her? Is there something wrong with that? Is that, acceptable? Is that normal? Is it, not normal, that kind of stuff. And then fortunately one of the nurses had mentioned something to us about an organization called Now,
Lay Me Down to Sleep.
Now Lay Me Down to Sleep. And they said that they have a photographer that can come in and take pictures. And, we were definitely like, yeah, absolutely. So, I took a few pictures, on my phone, and then we had her come in, and that was, awesome. We still have those pictures, have pictures of her up still, in our home, so that we see her every day. But it's just the people, you don't know what you don't know. And then when you're in one of those situations, you have all these thoughts going through your head, and the emotions of it all. It's just, you don't know which way is up. You don't know which way is right thinking or which way is wrong thinking. And to have somebody be able to say, we have somebody that, can take pictures so that you can remember your daughter. It was something that was in my head before they had mentioned it. But then, I kept battling with myself about, is there something wrong with this, wanting to take pictures of my daughter, even though she's not, not alive? So fortunately, like, as I said before, we had a nurse that mentioned that to us, and they came in and we took several pictures. And it was, again, as a bad experience can be, there was good in it. With, we now have pictures that we can have forever, and that our children after Lydia will be able to see pictures of their, big sister.
It really is one of those weird, nobody in the hospital really knows what to, it seemed in our situation, nobody really knows what to advise you to do. It's like, I sort of sometimes wish somebody was like, yeah, you should do this, or you should think about doing this. You should think about doing that. And it really was like, fly by the seat of your pants, and you hope you hope you don't never regret it. And there are things that I personally regret that I didn't do, or that I did do, or that I didn't ask. And it's, I don't know. Yeah. I'm glad you guys were able to get some photos. What happened after you guys left the hospital? Did your wife Danielle have any complications, or I don't know how to say this. Was she released on a clean bill of health, and you guys had to go home and figure out stuff?
We, I think we stayed like at least part of an extra day so that we could get, I guess, well, our time that we had with Lydia was limited just due to her state
The body
decreasing.
the body's decomposing.
Yeah, exactly. So our time was kind of limited. We had to like see her in like kind of periods of time. She couldn't stay with us the entire time. She had to go back into, where the nurses were, back in the room. So after they were like, we have to take her. She's not in a good place right now, and it's going to get worse soon. We stayed like a little bit, like at least half a day longer, just because I think it was best for Danielle. She needed kind of to have, I don't know, the people around her and that sort of thing, because it was just her and I, at our home. And being very new in the neighborhood, living there only 2 months, we, hadn't made a bunch of friends and all that. And both of us are, for the most part, pretty quiet, not like super extroverted. I'm quite the opposite of extroverted. So, but it was just, the atmosphere was good because of the things that the staff had done for us there. So I think that was the best place for her. She was released, clean bill of health and all that. And then going home was difficult. We had painted the nursery, gotten everything set up and all that. So she really wasn't comfortable or able to go into the nursery. I think we closed the door for a period of time. And then, as time passed, she was able to, get into the nursery, start going through the clothes and whatnot. One of the things that I think that I kind of battled with a lot was life afterwards. And I had spent hours and all possible time that I was able to just thinking about kind of that scenario of, not really moving on, but moving forward. And the thing that I had kind of thought of, or that came to me, was that life was, there was a new normal that was created by this event. And I think that I had read some things about that afterwards, where that was something that other people would say, that, you're not moving on or away from the experience and whatnot, but you're moving forward, creating a new normal with the memory of your child. And so it's not, you're not forgetting, just moving forward, which we have to do. That's what life is.
I've heard that phrase, moving forward, not moving on. And that is it's a good way to put it. It's, that event is the event of losing a child is such a life-changing, life-shattering, you're not able to put it behind you and say, oh, that was a good experience. But it's, you have to move forward. So
yeah, that was difficult. Danielle being at home by herself, working at home, all of the alone and kind of secluded time, so to speak. I think that was maybe made things more difficult. We did go to some find a support group through one of the hospitals in Charleston. And that was really good. Met some friends and some families there. And, got to hear others, talk about their experience and whatnot. My, I guess, kind of grief process. I was off work for about a week, and then went back to work. My grief process kind of, unfortunately, had to deal with anger. So that was kind of my main reaction: anger, impatience, that kind of stuff. None of it was like towards Danielle or anything like that. It was just kind of general impatience and anger about everything or anything. So, we were in our group for pregnancy and infant loss. And then like I started seeing a counselor through work as well. Sure, talking about, the experience. That's, I guess that's fine. It wasn't, I didn't feel that it was super beneficial, but it's always good to have somebody that, was there to listen to your thoughts and things that you're going through. Sometimes it's difficult to talk about all your problems with somebody that you're in the middle of this kind of a situation with, because it's like, obviously you're both down low, and then to pile your bad or your low from your day onto the other person who's already low can make things a little bit worse. So
sometimes it feels unfair too. Like,
sure.
I can't do this, and I can't have you do that on me too. So
sure. Yeah. Yeah. We both are, I guess, kind of introverts. So we like literally had to like tell each other, talk to me, tell me how you are doing, tell me where you are. We have to make sure that we're not doing the things that we feel like we want to do. It's, make an effort to do the things that we know that we should be doing. So we had like some friends and family come to our home, and our like small group kind of arranged things, and we had people from out of town come in, and it was great, but still being very fresh off the loss of our child, and both not being big people, I guess.
Big people.
We kind of had to take breaks from things, and kind of get our time just where it was the two of us, and kind of I guess get our thoughts and minds kind of back in order. But it was, I mean, it's necessary. Again, like my natural tendencies are to just push everybody away, go off by myself, figure it out mentally, decide on how I'm going to proceed, and get through and make it happen, kind of thing. And being relatively newly married and having done those things, throughout the course of my life, and then going through this experience, and then my wife, is almost the opposite of how handles things, almost the opposite of how I handle things. It's, there's a whole bunch of consideration and thinking that has to be done to, understand that, she doesn't handle things differently. Her experience with this loss is much, much different than mine. Or having carried a child for 30 weeks, and, the child living inside of her is, something that I'll never understand, just can respect and, support. So
the experience of each individual is so unique to them. And you mentioned that you felt the anger and frustration, and I felt those exact same things, and I didn't, like you said, I didn't show the anger to people or the frustration. It was all internalized, and it just ate me up, and until counseling helped me quite a bit to understand I could feel those basic feelings of anger and frustration, but I didn't have to hold on to them. Like, I could feel them, I didn't have to act on them, and then I could release them. And it was like, until I could understand that, like I always had, like, I can't pin it on anybody, and so I'm just going to pin it on myself. But yeah, the individual's experiences are so unique to themselves. So
yeah, if I discovered that for me, like my outlet or release of anger was managed by doing something, being active with like using my hands to do something, refinishing furniture, building something, fixing something that was broken, I mean, whatever. I mean, something along those lines. And that's how I figured out that that's kind of my release of anger. And that helped me tremendously. So
you were able to parlay that anger and that frustration into something that you could release it into something. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good. That's good.
Mm.
Did you have a service for your daughter? Did you
Yeah.
bury her? Did you
Yeah.
have? How was that? Being a young husband and father, for myself, I had no clue what to do. You know, I've only been
Mhm.
to funerals that were planned by somebody else, and
Mhm.
it was so. I had a one-track mind. I got it done, but I had no clue what I was doing, and
Mm.
it happened. And there was a lot of help from the people around me, but I don't know how that funeral ever got planned.
Mm.
Nothing I really did myself. How was it for
Yeah.
you? How was it for you
Yeah.
guys?
So we did have a viewing or memorial service, and then also a funeral. She is buried in a mausoleum, so she's not like down in the ground, so she's in a structure above ground. So we had trying to remember who, I guess it was somebody from the hospital had given us suggestions on, different funeral homes or whatnot. And they had like a list of like 5 different places, and their list was like, this place is the nicest, this place is the next nicest, this is next, and then the bottom one, basically they were said, this is the one that's the least nice, and it was the closest to our home, and that's what was important to us. So that's what we went with, because at the time, I would pass that cemetery every day, twice a day minimum, when I drove to work and took my kids to school, and then when I drove home from work and brought my kids home from school. So it was less than 15 minutes from our home. Early on, after we put her in the mausoleum or buried her, we would go over there, frequently for visits. But so as far as planning everything goes, we had family members present to help with planning and organizing. And like my parents were there, one of my brothers was there, and father-in-law, and maybe my mother-in-law and her husband as well. So we had input from family as far as, how things were to go and how we should kind of proceed with things. And we were completely blessed by my father-in-law and my brother, who, and this is just a horrible thought, but horrible thing, but it's something that's necessary. But all these things have to get paid for.
Yeah.
So we were completely blessed by my father-in-law and my brother, and they paid for everything. So a blessing that was to us, that we didn't have to pay for any of that. And it's just an absolute, it's mind-boggling to think that parents should be paying, or parents have to pay for, their baby's funeral. But I mean, when reality is that, there are things done, and people have to unfortunately get paid in that situation for that. So our family was a huge part in helping to organize and the funeral service. We had a viewing. It was open casket. That was something that we debated as far as, were we going to bury her, or cremation. We didn't do the cremation. We got a casket and buried her. Was again, as like we were talking about earlier, you don't know what you don't know, and just how odd and unreal the situation is of carrying your daughter out in a tiny casket into the back of a car, and then riding to a cemetery, and then putting the casket inside of a tomb, or whatever they're called, the mausoleum. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's difficult to describe.
I got to carry my son in his casket, and I've been pallbearers for a couple of other funerals, and it usually is with 6 people, and I was able to carry my son by myself, and it was such a
Right.
such a juxtaposition to how small and delicate it felt to pick up and carry my child to his final resting place. And it was like, oh, thank you for talking about that.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
I would say the impact that this child still has in our lives 6.5 years later. It's undescribable. I mean, 6.5 years later, I'm talking to a stranger that I just met about an hour ago. And we've been talking about, our children for the past hour plus. And like I mentioned early on, I'm always trying to find the good in situations. And again, as terrible of a situation this is, it's created new ways of seeing things in life and value in things that I never would have considered before or would have just taken for granted. Giving thanks for every single thing that we have that I don't deserve and all these things. So it's her life, while it was brief in terms of from when she was conceived till the day that she was born, just that 30 weeks time frame has changed my life and so many other people's lives, and will continue to change until the day I'm no longer on this earth. So I'm thankful for that experience and thankful for being able to see things from that perspective, to allow them to change me as a man, to be a better man, a better father, and better husband.
It is amazing how impactful the situation is. As you said, the brief life of Lydia for 30 weeks has impacted you and will impact you and your whole family for the remainder of your lives.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's awe-inspiring and sad.
Yeah. There's no single word. I don't think there's any single word to define all the the emotion. With from all the different directions, the highs, the lows. Yeah, it's very difficult to describe or define.
Well, Jonah, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for talking about your wonderful daughter, Lydia.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I appreciate your time.